This is J. Krishnamurti's 8th public talk in Saanen, 1965.
I would like this morning, if I may, go into the question of what I think is most important in life, and probably is most important also in the life of most of us, which is love and death. But before we go into that, I would like to make certain things clear. Communication is comparatively easy when we both know the same language and give meaning, the same meaning to the same word. And if both of us have a referent which is constant, then communication becomes fairly easy, as it is seen from the mariner which was up near Mars and sent photographs and messages to the earth. As long as verbal communication is necessary, we must both be very clear in the understanding and the usage of words. But what is much more difficult is communion. There, we are not sharing, though that word communion implies, according to the dictionary, the meaning sharing, partaking. I think sharing is not possible except with regard to things, experiences, ideas. But if you go beyond that, sharing becomes almost impossible. You can't share, you and I, the beauty of those mountains. There they are. We can talk about them. We can write books about them. Put words together to make a poem. But you and I can't share that extraordinary beauty of that mountain. It is there for you and me to watch it, to look at it, to delight in it. But we are not sharing that beauty. Beauty cannot ever be shared, because beauty is not a stimulus. And if we understand the meaning of that word sharing, then one sees very clearly that sharing implies the one who has experienced or knows or has knowledge and is willing to partake it with you. That is generally what is called sharing. And when there is that sharing, in that there goes the whole hierarchical system of division. Sharing implies, does it not, You know and I don't know. You give me, you share with me what I do not know, what I have not experienced, what I have never felt. You are good enough, you are willing enough, you are generous enough to share something with me. But truth, beauty cannot be shared. You can't have it and I can't have it. It isn't a personal property. It isn't a thing that you and I possess to be shared with another. It is there, like the sunset, like the mountain, like the flow of a river, and the quietude of an evening. Because it is there, you can look at it and delight in it. But you can't share that beauty with another. The other must be equally sensitive, deeply aware, intelligent. Then the beauty is not to be shared, but to be looked at, to be enjoyed, to be reveled in, to be taken delight in. So, when we use the word share, there is generally implied in it the one who possesses and the one who does not. The one who has something and the other has not. And in that attitude, in that feeling, in that sharing, there is this hierarchical approach to life. That is the top brass and the common soldier, the Pope and the ordinary clergyman, the ordinary priest and the lowly monk. There is the cardinal in his magnificent robes and the poor monk in his black cloth. And the one who knows and the one who does not know. And that breeds infinite sorrow, great pain, struggle, ambition, and authority. Please listen to all this, because we are going into something which demands no sharing. Therefore, there is no partaking. And you must really understand, if you will, this dreadful, if I may use the word evil, of hierarchical division of life, as the one who knows and one who does not know. Truth cannot possibly be divided as the one who knows and the one who does not know. Therefore, there is no authority, no hierarchical approach. The approach of authority, of the division as the hierarchical outlook on life is an evil thing, is a poisonous, dreadful thing. And what we are going to do this morning is not share. We both of us are going to inquire, are going to move, flow into something which we don't know. So please do not wait for me to tell you, or for me to share something which you have not, or for me to give you enlightenment, or freedom. No one can give it, nor can anyone share it. And as most of us are used to this attitude in life of someone giving and you receiving, creates a division which brings about authority and all the evil things that come with it. So there is no follower and the one who leads. There is no teacher and the taught. And that's a marvelous thing if you realize it. Because in that there is great beauty. In that there is freedom. In that there is the ending of sorrow, because one has to work, inquire, break through and destroy to find out for oneself. And what we are going to do, if we may, this morning, is to inquire into these things, which seems to me and seems to most of us so important in life. Love and the thing called death. To inquire, there must be first freedom. Not freedom at the end, freedom right from the beginning, to inquire, to find out, to discover. Otherwise you can't look, you can't inquire, you can't move. So, a mind that is inquiring, even in the most complicated scientific field, even in the most complex structure of a human mind, there must be freedom. You can't come to it, say, with your knowledge, with your prejudices, with your anxieties, fears, and then you can't inquire. They will guide, they will shape, they will push you in different directions. And therefore, all inquiry ceases when there is no freedom. I mean by that, when we are trying to see what this extraordinary thing in life means, this thing that we call love, you must come to it not with your personal or prejudices, not with your conclusions, not with your concepts that it must be this way or it must not be that way, that it must be expressed in the family between the husband and wife, or love is profane and love is spiritual. They think all that prevents from really going into it most profoundly, easily, and with a breathless pursuit. And to inquire. So, you must need freedom. Therefore, one must be aware from the very beginning of this inquiry how we are conditioned, how we are prejudiced, how we look at life through pleasure. And therefore, we prevent ourselves from looking what actually is. And then perhaps we can go, when we are free, to inquire into this extraordinary thing called love. We live in this world in relationship. Relationship between man and woman, between friends, between ideas, property, and so on. All life is a relationship. And relationship cannot exist when the mind is isolating itself in all its activities. Please watch this in yourselves. When there is this self-centered activity, there is no relationship. Whether you sleep in the same bed or whether you are going in a bus or when you are looking at a mountain. As long as there is this self-centered activity, obviously it can only lead to isolation, and therefore there is no relationship. And from this self-centered activity, we begin to inquire into what love is. And again, that prevents real inquiry, because this self-centered activity is based on pleasure and the avoidance of pain. So our inquiry, if we are seeking from a center which exists for itself as pleasure and avoiding pain, then our inquiry will be useless and vain. So to really inquire, there must be freedom from this self-centered activity. And that is extremely difficult. It requires great intelligence, great understanding, great insight. Therefore, one has to have a very good mind, a mind that is not sentimental, not emotional, not carried away, not enthusiastic. But a mind that is very clear, aware, sensitive all round. It's only such a mind then can begin to inquire into what we call love. Now, what is love for most of us? Actually, not what we would like it to be. What we would like it to be has no reality. It is an idea. It's a concept, it's a formula. And therefore it has no validity at all. We must start with what is and not with what should be. We must start with the fact and not with opinions, with conclusions. Because conclusions, opinions, formulas are so misleading. They are so destructive. A marvelous utopia conceived or formulated by few clever, cunning minds can twist and destroy and kill thousands and millions because of that one idea. And we do the same with ourselves. We have a formula and a feeling that love should be something. And therefore we torture our lives. our lives are agony. We are trying to approximate the fact with an illusion which is merely an invention of the mind, which has no reality. So, we are going to inquire not from what should be, but from what is. What is actually our love? There is pleasure in it, pain, anxiety, jealousy, attachment, possessiveness, domination, and the fear of losing that which we have possessed. There is the love of relationship between people, and there is the love of an idea, of a formula as the nation, as God, as an utopia. So when we talk of love, we are only talking about actual relationship, not the poisonous thing called love for your country, or that nationalistic patriotism which is exploited by the clever politician and the priest. We are talking actually of the fact that love between human beings that exists actually. In that love, there is pain. There is the torture of uncertainty, which is jealousy. The fear of loneliness, and therefore the demand, therefore the urge to possess, to dominate, to hold. These are facts. And therefore, the legal marriage with society has established for the sake of the children. But in that family, as a unit is opposed to every other unit. These are all facts. My family, as opposed to the rest of the family of the world. And in that family there is this battle going on incessantly to possess, to dominate, the fear, jealousy, anxiety, whether you are loved or not loved, and so on and on and on. That's what we call love. And we try various ways of escaping from this torture of the family, though one must have a family, by social activity, by becoming terribly religious, which is to join some ugly little organization, believing in some formula about God or Jesus or the Buddha or whatever you will. Or treat the whole of relationship as something very, very superficial, just a passing thing with which you have to put up. Grit your teeth and carry on. So that is what we call love. and being dissatisfied with that kind of love, we have the love of God, or the love of humanity, or the love of your neighbor. We don't know what love is, but we love God. We love our neighbor, at least we must. And in the love of the neighbor, we're destroying the neighbor, because through our competition, ruthlessness, through our business, through our cunning, through all this thing of the inventions of modern society. So all that's what we call love. The love of the parent for his children. You know, the whole structure and the game and the torture of it all. And one knows all this. One is intimately and terribly, painfully aware of all this. If you're at all sensitive, watching, feeling, looking, then one asks, is it possible to live in a family, to live with a wife and a husband without this torture? And perhaps then one begins to find out what may be love. Because love demands, doesn't it really, not as an idea, seeing the actuality of our daily life, the everyday incidents of the family, in the house, in the office, in the bus, in the car, on the road, the disrespect for people. Knowing the torture of all that. Is it possible to let all that go? Actually, not theoretically, actually not be attached, actually not be possessive, not dominating. And if your wife wants or your husband wants to leave, not to feel jealous, hate, antagonism. Then only there is a possibility of something unknown coming into being. Because the love that we have is the known. With all the misery, the confusion, the torture, the jealousy, the ugliness of the violence, of pleasure in sex and pain, you know, all that. And that's what we know. We are unwilling to face that fact. The fact of what we know. Please, just listen to me for 2 minutes now. You know, you can live with beauty, the mountain, and get very used to it. After a week or 10 days, you won't even pay attention to it. Like these villagers who don't even look at that mountain for a second. They're used to it. We get used to beauty as well as to ugliness. What is important is not the beauty or the ugliness, but getting used to it, anything. We get used to our lives, our tortures, our miseries, our petty little houses and minds and all the ugliness of our life. We don't want to look beyond. We don't want to tear through all this to find out. And so we get used to it. And when one gets used to anything, it does not matter what it is, whether it is beautiful or torture or anxiety or an ugly thing. The mind becomes dull, insensitive, unaware. And being unaware, insensitive, it occupies itself with all kinds of things. Occupies itself with God, with religions, with entertainment, with social work, with gossip, with reading and accumulating knowledge and looking at television. So, to be aware of this fact of our life, of the tortures, the possessiveness, the domination, the interference, the correction, the criticism, the constant demand. Now, to live with that and not get used to it. To be aware of all that and not accept it. When we are talking about acceptance, I do not mean put up with it, to embrace it, but to look at it, not avoid it, not escape from it, not give reasons why this should be and that should not be, but to look at the fact of our daily relationship. And to look at that fact demands great energy. And you have that energy if you're not escaping from it. Escaping from it either through words, through explanations, through trying to find out the cause of whatever it is. But to live being totally aware of it and knowing all the intricacies, subtleties of it. Therefore, being entirely, totally familiar with the known, then perhaps one can be free of the known. And if we do not know what love is, then we shall never know what death is. Because we have got used to death. There are thousands being killed in Vietnam. We've had 2 terrible wars. Thousands, millions killed in Russia for ideas. And we've got used to it. The starvation, the poverty and the degradation in Asia. And we get used to the prosperity of Europe. or America. So we have got used to this thing called death. We accept it. We say that is the inevitable end of man. Old age, disease, and the grave, or the crematorium, whichever you like. And if you don't get used to it, if you don't accept it, in the sense, not revolt against it, because you can't, it's there, it's coming. Every day we are growing older. We have misused the organism so badly. There is disease. You can die young or die old. But there is disease, pain, torture, and the demand for good health. And even you may live 150, 200 years, there is always that thing at the end of it. And one has to understand it. You know, most of us are aware or know that death is inevitable, and so we have faith in reincarnation, in resurrection, in some form of continuity in after death, because that's all we want. So again, belief, formula, hope plays an extraordinarily important part in our life. Not the fact of death, but is there life after? What is the point of struggling, cultivating virtue, becoming good, all this silly stuff that one does, to end in death. And therefore there must be something after. What is this something that we want to continue? You understand? All the religions throughout the world promise this thing. In different words, in different spheres, in different types of hopes, and so on. But when you put away all that, what is it that we want to continue? You understand? What is it? Our daily life, isn't it? The life that we know. The life of companionship. The life of daily torture, daily uncertainty, daily pleasure. The agony of loneliness. The quarrels. The wars. The going to the office day after day for 30, 40 years. The petty little minds that we have. The conditioned life. And the pleasures of traveling, seeing something new. The disease, the pain, the utter empty boredom of life, the loneliness. That's all we know. And now we also know how to go to Mars and take photographs. We'll know more and more of external knowledge, things known. And the things unknown is outside, in the space where the stars, the universe is. So, what is the thing that we so desperately cling to? The memory of things that have been. It's a terrible thing to realize that we cling to something that is dead, past, gone, finished. Isn't it? That's all that we know, and that we cling. To that we cling. We cling to something that is known. The character, the books, or not the books, the paintings that one has done, the experiences, the pleasures, the anxieties, the guilt. All that is the past. That's what we are clinging to. That's what we know. And so we want that continued afterwards. If I've lost my husband, wife, I want to meet him on the other side. I don't inquire the kind of husband and the wife I have known. The husband, the wife who has quarreled, been ugly, ill-tempered, nagging, all the rest of it. So, what we are afraid of is losing the known, which is the past. The past through the present, which creates the future. And that's what we are clinging to. Then time as the known. Please do listen to this. I am not doing a propaganda for something. I am just pointing out the facts. And when you cling to something of the past, your mind, your heart, your whole being is dead already. It doesn't matter if it is a deep delight, a deep pleasure. As long as the mind holds to it, the mind becomes an ugly little thing that cannot live. So that is our life. And being afraid of that so-called life ending, we invent. Or we hope. Now when you are aware of all that, not escaping but looking, observing, listening, being aware choiceless of everything that's going on inside you. Then you are faced with a question, which is, death is actually the unknown. You don't know it. You have ideas about it. You have ideas of fears or anxieties, this tremendous sense of being alone, in solitude, in loneliness. And when you are aware of all that, then one asks oneself, can you die? Can one die to everything known? That is, can one die to the past? Not bit by bit, not keeping the pleasurable past and rejecting the unpleasant past. Dying to pleasure as well as to pain, which is the past. End it, without argument. You know, when death comes, you don't argue. You don't say to it, give me a few more days. It's there. You're gone. In the same way, to empty the mind of all the past. Then perhaps emptying the mind willingly, naturally, effortlessly, then perhaps there is the freedom from the known, and therefore there is an understanding of the unknown. You understand? We don't know what love is. We know the pain and the pleasure of love, but we don't know in the sense, see the fact of it, as you see the fact of a mountain. So, love is something unknown as death. And when the mind is free of the known, then there is that which is not knowable through words, through experience, through visions, through any form of expression. And without knowing that love and knowing the extraordinary fullness, richness of death, we shall never know what it is to live. Live without torture, without anxiety, without the pain of everyday travail. Shall we discuss or ask questions of what we have talked about this morning? What is the origin of continuity? Continuity. Fairly simple, isn't it? I've had a pleasure. I wanted to continue. And thought gives it the nourishment to continue. If thought didn't interfere with that pleasure, it would have no continuity, endurance. Do see it's so simple it is. You have written a book and you put your name to it, and that gives you a pleasure because you become known, praised, criticized, publicized, and all the rest of that nonsense. And you liked that. And you thought things about it. You meet your friends, say what a marvelous book that was, or what rotten book that was. And you delight in it. And that gives content. It is really very simple to be aware of this total process. Therefore, you can put your name to it and it has no meaning, or not put your name to it. Then you function as a human being anonymously. And anything that is great must be anonymous. I would like to ask a question, since you are not asking questions. It must have struck you and you must be asking yourself, if you are asking yourself, how is one to die to anything? You understand? How is one to die to a pleasure that I've had? How is one to die to the insult that I have received? How does one die? How does one put away easily, happily, without the least effort, to a remembrance of something that has given you tremendous pleasure? It is easy to put away something that has given pain. That very quickly one forgets. The pain that you had a week ago when your tooth was bothering you. You've forgotten it. You've forgotten the baby that gave you such intense pain when it was born. You've forgotten it already. But the pleasure of that baby, the delight of seeing grow, all that business. How is one to die to all the known and yet live in this world and function reasonably, efficiently, going to the office and all the rest of it? Don't you want to know? Why don't you ask? You see, is it that you accept all this? You see, that's why there is great sorrow in not asking, in finding out. Not from me, finding out for yourself. Not asking fundamental questions and going through to the very end of it to find out, irrespective of your family, society, and all the paraphernalia that surrounds one. How does one totally reject, which is after all dying? Forgiveness is a dreadful thing. Right? No? All right, I'll explain. First you accumulate the insults, the angers, and all that accumulate, and then after accumulating, you forgive. No? But if you never accumulated, there's nothing to forgive. Right? So, never to accumulate the past. That's the first thing. First, find out if it is at all possible never to accumulate. And then die to it. If you don't accumulate, there's no dying to it. In the same way, if you don't accumulate the pain, the insults, the angers, then there is nothing to forgive. A mind that's forgiving is a cruel mind. Is a so that is one problem. That is not to accumulate, and having accumulated, as most of us do, to die, to reject it totally. Not bit by bit. That is the greatest sorrow of man. To use time as a means of dying, rejecting. Because one can do it totally different way. We are going to that. Please, I'm not answering you. Don't say I've learnt it and I'm going to apply it. If you have learnt what I have been said, then it's like the man who forgives. Then you will be more tortured because you have learned some formula and you're going to apply it. Therefore, you're back again in the same old torture and conflict and effort. How am I, who have accumulated essentially pleasure, different forms of it, different aspects, different nuances, subtleties, remembrances of pleasure. We know how to get rid of pain, because somehow, strangely, the mind also gets rid of it quickly, because it's pursuing pleasure. I don't know if you're following this. Its main concern is pleasure, and all its evaluations are pleasure. And therefore it can reject very quickly anything that's not pleasurable, almost unconsciously. So, the pleasure, with all its subtleties and the values, how am I, who have accumulated that, die to it, reject it? Not piecemeal by piecemeal, but totally. Huh? You understand my question?
By letting go.
By letting go. Who am I to let go? Who is it that is letting go?
The habit of accumulation.
Who is the maker of that habit? It is still the pleasure. Oh, you.
The center goes.
Huh? You don't listen. You don't listen to yourself as you're saying things. You don't learn from what you are saying. You say, let go. Who is it that is letting go? The image, that is the center of that image, who says, the pleasure, the image that is the essence of pleasure says, I let that go because I want greater pleasure, which is the understanding of the unknown. Before it was the house, the toy, the house, the wife, the sex, the family, the nation. Now because you're a little bit older and a little bit senile and angry, fed up with the whole damn thing, and you say, well, the unknown. No, sirs, you're not learning. You're not learning from your own observation. No, please just listen to me. I know all the questions. Think about it. Look. And please, would you quietly, I have talked for an hour. I'm sorry, I don't want to be the only person that talks. But just please listen. How am I, who have gathered so much pleasure, and therefore so much pain? You understand? So much pain, not merely pleasure. How am I who have sought and searched out pleasure and therefore invited pain? How am I to lose, to die to all that, drop away? First of all, why should I drop everything away? Why should I drop my pleasure? Because you tell me that pleasure breeds pain? Or do I see the significance, the nature, the structure of pleasure? Because I see it. If I see it, not verbally, not as an idea, which again becomes organized pleasure, but if I see the nature of pleasure, you understand? Like seeing the nature of a tree, how it grows, seeing it, actually living with it, not accepting, not denying, not thinking about it, not pushing it away, not doing anything. No positive action taking place, but merely looking at it. Therefore, looking at the memory of pleasure completely quietly, without any movement of the mind. You understand? Look, sirs, when you look at that mountain, if you look at it very quietly, it tells you lots of things. You look more deeply. You feel more the nature of it. You see the curve, the beauty, the line, the skyline. You see everything much more. But if your mind is chattering, asking, demanding, pushing, all that one does, then you're not looking. So, to understand and therefore be free of the past, you must know the nature, the structure, the meaning of the whole pleasure, and to watch it, be aware of it. Not to say, I'll keep this pleasure and throw away that pleasure. Just to watch the whole structure of pleasure. Then you will say that you are no longer, that it has no longer significance, and that you have to remember certain things and not that which gives pleasure. And therefore you die to things that are given pleasure, that have given pleasure, and to things like technical knowledge you have to have. And you have to add more to it. But technical knowledge doesn't give you pleasure. But you can use technical knowledge to derive pleasure. So a mind that is very aware of itself, there's the mind that is aware of its own activities. That is, self-knowing is the beginning of wisdom. Self-knowing brings freedom. And when there is freedom from the known, which is the very image of pleasure, then then the mind enters into quite a different field, into quite a different dimension.